I would like to also welcome you to this event. We will have a day and a half of what I hope will be lively and enjoyable discussions. We have a programme which has been circulated after a brief introduction from myself. We will have 4 papers. Firstly, on the renegotiation of PPP contracts from Ron Fisher. Then Jonathan Gifford will talk about the US experience. Then Marion Moschereau will talk more broadly about what encourages private participation in infrastructure. And then Professor Gouache will talk about the experience of transport contract renegotiations in Latin America. My own paper has been circulated, but you'll be relieved to know that I won't be speaking in a lot of detail about all the points on this in this paper. They are there by means of a provocation and a stimulation for the discussions that we are going to have. We are here at a very important time for the consideration of renegotiation of PPP contracts, particularly speaking from a European perspective, where there have been in the new European directives on public procurement and on concessions specific legal provisions for contract modification. These will come into force at the latest in April 2016, but this will change the landscape in Europe. For those of you who haven't come across the organisation which I'm representing, the European Institute of Public Administration, just to be clear, IPA is not a European institution. We have been deliberately created to be a little bit offshore, so that sometimes we can say things which are critical of the way European institutions and agencies operate, sometimes to be a critical friend, saying things which can't be said by people within the institutions. However, we do have a mission to promote European integration. We are a not-for-profit organisation, and our governance is a board of governors on which 23 of the EU member states are represented. Just as regards the European PPP Forum, which I set up more than 9 years ago, this was to fill what was perceived to be a policy void in Europe at the time. In other words, quite simply, there was nowhere for policymakers to go to get advice on when PPP was the right delivery solution and how to implement it when it was the right solution. That was also the driver for my book on PPP that I wrote in 2007. Since that date, the void has been filled in many ways, most notably by the European PPP Expertise Centre located in the European Investment Bank. And if anyone hasn't had access to their more than 40 papers on PPP practice, I strongly commend it to you. The core aim of this event is to move from an analysis of what has been happening to attempt to develop some concrete policy recommendations about how the public sector can achieve favourable outcomes in PPP renegotiations. And that stems from the core philosophy from which successful renegotiation has to follow, that the idea of PPP as a form of delivering infrastructure is to secure value for money for the public sector. The next slide, a few things about me. The one thing just to add to that is that we may sometimes in these few days be a little bit rude about politicians. Well, I feel comfortable and able to do that because I'm talking about something I did in my past life when I was a municipal councillor in London. So that's me and what I've been doing. As I mentioned, there are a number of core propositions which I think we need to consider in this forum. Firstly, the idea that PPP is about value for money for the public sector. The doom loop of the unnecessary road to the minister's home area with a non-competitive selection, no real effort in managing the contract, and the final part of the loop being political donations by the concessionaire to the party which has awarded them the contract, is the scenario which is the antithesis of what we are trying to consider and trying to achieve in this forum. The situation we are in is that there is a lot of advice and guidance on how to award PPP contracts, and although there's extensive guidance and many reports on PPP execution, it is still, relatively speaking, a neglected subject. And the proposition being that value for money in a public-private partnership is not just the value for money secured in the award procedure, but the value for money secured through the effective management of the contract. Management of the contract having two components. Firstly, monitoring the performance of the economic operator, and secondly, effective management of change.